When the judge ended my 22-year marriage and my ex-wife told me, "You'll die poor," I thought my life had collapsed for good. But 1 hour later, my phone rang, from a number no phone should recognize. A Pentagon officer told me my grandfather's top-secret mission had just been declassified after 60 years, and that he had left behind a fortune tied to a Cold War cover-up. But the money wasn't the real secret. The real secret was why my ex-wife's new partner's family had been waiting decades for this moment, and why my grandfather predicted the exact day I'd lose everything. If this part pulls you in, like the video, share it, and get ready, because the deeper we go, the darker it gets. The cardboard boxes in my cramped Milwaukee apartment didn't look like moving boxes, they looked like gravestones. Each one marked something I'd lost: my marriage, my home, my dignity. I sat on the hardwood floor with the radiator hissing behind me, holding the final divorce decree in one hand and my phone in the other. The timestamp read 3:47 p.m., exactly 1 hour after Judge Morrison struck his gavel and dissolved my 22-year marriage to Elena Whitcomb. My phone buzzed. Against every instinct, I opened the message. "Hope you're enjoying that pathetic studio apartment. Grant just moved his Steinway into your old music room. The mover said it's worth more than you make in 7 years. We're turning your studio into his cigar lounge. You know, for someone who actually matters." Another buzz. A photo. Grant Ashland, the man Elena threw our marriage away for, standing in my home office, his Harvard diploma hanging where my grandfather's medals used to be. Then, "You'll die poor and alone, Sam. Just like your grandfather. At least he had his precious secrets. What do you have?" Before I could throw the phone, it began to ring. Not a normal number. Not even a number at all. Just 00000000001. Something inside me went cold. I stared at it for 5 rings, 6. My thumb moved on its own. Samuel Aldrin speaking. The voice on the other end was crisp, sharp, military precise. "Mr. Aldrin, this is Colonel Reed Halvorson from the Pentagon's Archivist and Estate Recovery Division. You need to listen very carefully." My brain struggled to catch up. What is this about? "Your grandfather, Staff Sergeant William Aldrin, completed a classified operation in the Cambodian jungle in 1963. Codename, Silent Measure." I blinked. My grandfather was a supply clerk in Vietnam. He played piano at officer clubs. That's all. That was his cover story, Mr. Aldrin. My blood ran cold. The operation he completed has remained sealed for exactly 60 years. As of midnight last night, its classification expired. I stood up abruptly, almost tripping over a box. What does this have to do with me? There was a pause. "Your grandfather recovered something of immense value, something the Pentagon was never able to publicly acknowledge. He never claimed his compensation. With interest, the amount now owed to his direct heir is approximately $148 million. The phone slipped from my hand. I scrambled, grabbed it. That's impossible. He died in a state-run nursing home. We couldn't even afford a private room." Colonel Halvorson's voice softened just slightly. "Staff Sergeant Aldrin chose silence to protect this country. But he also made preparations. His will contains instructions. And, Mr. Aldrin, those instructions say to contact you on the day you lose everything." My heart stopped. W.H. what? His exact wording. "Notify my grandson on the day he stands with nothing left to lose. Only then will he understand what he must do." I sank to the floor, dizzy. How could he possibly know the exact day Your grandfather specialized in pattern prediction. It's how he survived Cambodia. It's how he secured what he found. And it's why we're speaking. I covered my eyes with one hand. What exactly did he recover? That information can only be delivered in person. There is a United Air flight leaving Milwaukee for Washington, D.C. in 3 hours. First class. Window seat 2A. Purchased in your name. I swallowed hard. Why, the window seat? This detail was specifically requested in your grandfather's file. I felt like the floor tilted. How do you even know I'm divorced today? Your grandfather's instructions were very explicit. We were to contact you only when my grandson loses wife, home, and reputation in a single season. My throat tightened. Elena's last text echoed in my mind. "You'll die poor and alone." I whispered, why would he say something like that about me? Because it mirrors what happened to him. I tried to breathe. "Colonel, what did my grandfather bring back from Cambodia?" He paused. "Then, the thing your ex-wife's new partner's grandfather spent decades trying to retrieve. The thing Staff Sergeant Aldrin encoded inside his music journals. The thing powerful families would destroy a man to claim." My heart pounded. "Colonel, what am I walking into? A secret 60 years old. A fortune nearly lost to time. And a choice your grandfather couldn't make. But believed you would. He inhaled. I'll see you at the Pentagon at 0800 hours. Bring your grandfather's journal, the one filled with musical compositions. My head snapped up. How do you know about that? Because, Mr. Aldrin, those are not musical compositions. They are encryption keys. The line went dead. The room was suddenly too quiet. My eyes drifted to the one cardboard box I hadn't opened since the divorce. The one marked in my mother's handwriting. Grandpa Williams' things. I opened the journal. For the first time in my life, I noticed faint pencil markings on the first page. 5 words. For Samuel, when all ends. And just like that, my ruined life wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The flight to Washington, D.C. felt unreal, like I'd been pulled out of my own life and dropped into someone else's script. First class, just like the colonel said, seat 2A by the window. A detail so specific it haunted me. My grandfather, dead for 3.5 decades, had planned this moment. Knew this moment. Predicted this moment. But how? The city lights below flickered like sheet music, each cluster of brightness resembling the patterns in my grandfather's journal. I slid the leather-bound book from my backpack and opened it again. The handwriting wasn't neat, but it was deliberate, measured strokes, odd spacing, rhythm changes that made no musical sense. My hands traced the faint pencil marks in the margins. For years, my family thought these markings were just the ramblings of an aging man losing his clarity. But now I saw them for what they were, code. The stranger sitting next to me, a woman with a worn leather jacket, leaned slightly toward me. Musician, she asked, nodding at the journal. Something like that, I said, closing it. She smiled. You're nervous. Either about where you're going, or who's waiting for you there. Both. The word hung in the air, unspoken. I didn't talk for the rest of the flight. When we landed at Reagan National Airport, my phone buzzed. Another restricted number. Mr. Aldrin, Colonel Halvorson's voice came through, clipped as ever. A driver will meet you at the terminal exit. Do not leave with anyone else. Anyone else? I repeated. There are eyes on you. Some friendly, some not. Your grandfather's name carries weight. Still. The line ended. No explanation. No reassurance. The driver was easy to spot, black suit, military posture, sunglasses at night. He held a simple card that read Aldrin. No first name. Sir, he said, taking my bag before I could protest. This way. Washington at night looked like a city holding its breath. The monuments glowed silently against the sky, but the streets near the Pentagon felt colder, sharper, like secrets lived in the pavement cracks. The car pulled into a restricted entrance where guards inspected IDs, scanned the vehicle, and checked undercarriages. After passing the third checkpoint, the driver spoke for the first time. Your grandfather was a legend among some circles, he said quietly, almost to himself. Among what circles? I asked. He didn't answer. Just pulled into an underground bay and opened my door. Colonel Halvorson was waiting. Mr. Aldrin. Good. Follow me. His voice echoed off the concrete as we stepped into a corridor that seemed designed to intimidate. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Security cameras tracked every movement. Your grandfather's work was buried beneath 7 layers of classification, Halvorson said without looking back. Only 4 men alive knew the complete truth. 2 have died. 1 is missing. And the 4th? I asked. He slowed, then looked at me. You're speaking to him. Something in the way he said it made the air colder. We entered a chamber that looked less like a briefing room and more like a vault. Steel walls. A single table. Boxes stacked neatly on it with my grandfather's name printed in bold military lettering. Everything you thought you knew about Staff Sergeant William Aldrin is incomplete, Halvorson began. He was not a supply clerk. He was part of a small intelligence unit conducting unauthorized cross-border operations. I swallowed. Unauthorized? Meaning if they were caught, Halvorson said, they did not exist. He opened the first file. A photograph slid toward me. My grandfather, young, lean, wearing jungle fatigues, standing beside a downed aircraft half hidden in vines. This was February 1963, Halvorson continued. Your grandfather's unit located a Soviet reconnaissance plane that crashed during a covert mission. Most of the crew died on impact. 1 survived. He placed a second photo on the table, a man on a makeshift stretcher, face bloodied but conscious. Colonel Yuri Karshev. High-level Soviet intelligence. He carried information that could have rewritten the entire Cold War. And my grandfather found him? I asked. He did more than that, Halvorson said. He decoded what Karshev told him. Halvorson handed me a transcript, the edges yellowed with age. Half the page was redacted. But enough remained. Swiss accounts. Defense contractors. Compromised helicopter parts. American casualties. Ashland family. My chest tightened. Ashland, as in Grant Ashland's family? I asked slowly. Halvorsen didn't blink. Your ex-wife's new partner is the grandson of one of the most powerful defense suppliers of the era. His grandfather, Everett Ashland, appears more than 60 times in these documents. I sat back. This can't be real. Halvorsen slid a final document toward me. A ledger. Names. Dates. Transactions. Every one leading back to Swiss accounts containing money funneled through shell companies during the war. And on the last page, written in pencil. Encoded in the measures. For Samuel. I stared at the journal in my hands. My grandfather encoded all this inside music? Not just music, Halvorsen corrected. Musical encryption. A cipher disguised as compositions. Only someone with musical training could break it. He didn't trust the government with everything he found. So he entrusted it to his bloodline. My voice was barely a whisper. He left it for me. No, Halvorsen said quietly. He left it for whoever lived long enough, and lost enough, to understand its weight. I didn't know what that meant until Halvorsen unlocked the final box. Inside lay a sealed envelope, brittle with age, addressed in my grandfather's handwriting. To Samuel. When the world takes everything from you. Only then open this. My throat tightened. Halvorsen slid it toward me. Your grandfather predicted the fall of his own grandson decades before it happened. And he believed the day you lost everything would be the day you were ready to finish what he could not. I stared at the envelope. At the handwriting. At the life I didn't know I'd inherited. When I finally opened it, a single sentence leaped from the page like a ghost rising. Go to Storage Unit 314 in Baltimore. The key is inside the 7th measure. I looked up at Halvorsen. What's in Baltimore? He exhaled. Everything your grandfather died protecting. And everything the Ashland family has spent 60 years trying to bury. Baltimore smelled like rain and rust when I stepped out of the cab. The address Colonel Halvorsen gave me belonged to a storage facility that looked abandoned from the street, half the units dented, weeds growing through cracks, a flickering sign that read Harborlock Storage with only half the letters lit. But the keypad worked perfectly when I typed the sequence I'd decoded from the 7th measure of my grandfather's composition. A melody I'd played hundreds of times as a kid was actually a numerical sequence. The realization made my stomach twist. The gate creaked open. Unit 314 was at the far end of the last row. Rust streaked the metal door. My breath fogged in the cold air. Each step felt like walking toward a truth I wasn't prepared for but couldn't turn away from. The key from my grandfather's journal slid into the lock and turned smoother than any 35-year-old lock should. Inside? I wasn't sure what I expected. Evidence? Weapons? More money? What I found was stranger. The single light bulb buzzed overhead as I pulled the chain. The unit held one thing, a tall, military green filing cabinet. Old. Scratched. Unmarked, until I pulled it forward and saw a sticker on the back. Unit 447, transferred 1987. Authorized, SSGW, Aldrin. I opened the top drawer. A chess set sat inside, perfectly arranged mid-game. Not random. A position I recognized instantly. My grandfather had played it with me when I was 8. The Budapest Gambit, he said every time I messed it up. The power is in the sacrifice. I moved a piece, and a soft click sounded behind the drawer. A false compartment opened. Inside was a key to a safe deposit box at Baltimore First National Bank. Attached was a folded paper. A message. They will come for this. Don't open anything alone. My pulse hammered. The air in the unit felt too still. Too quiet. I looked over my shoulder. Nothing. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling someone had been here recently. Dust covered everything except the cabinet handle. My phone buzzed. An unknown number again. I answered cautiously. Hello? Mr. Aldrin. The voice was lower, smoother, dangerous. This is Roland Ashland. My stomach dropped. I said nothing. I understand you've been traveling, he said casually, as if we were old friends. Washington first, now Baltimore. How do you know where I am? He chuckled. Powerful families watch the right people, Samuel. Your grandfather was one of them. And now, apparently, so are you. I gripped the phone tighter. What do you want? To help you make the right decision. That's not what it sounds like. Another soft laugh. The documents you've found, or will soon find, are historically sensitive. They could cause instability. You mean they could expose your family's crimes? His tone sharpened just a hair. My grandfather did what he had to do for national security. Your grandfather sold defective helicopter parts to the army and funneled money to the Soviets. That's one version of the story. It's the truth. Truth is what powerful people decide it is, Sam. Haven't you learned that yet? I clenched my jaw. What are you calling for? An offer. His voice softened into something oily and confident. You walk away. Take the Pentagon money. Leave the rest. Forget Baltimore. Forget what you think you know. And live wealthy, quiet, comfortable. And if I don't? Then you will lose more than your marriage. The words were ice. You're threatening me, I said quietly. I'm offering you mercy. The same mercy your grandfather was too foolish to accept. I hung up before he could finish. My hands trembled with anger and fear. But beneath both, something else was growing. Resolve. I grabbed the key and left the storage unit. The moment I stepped outside, headlights snapped on from across the lot. A dark sedan. Windows tinted black. The engine roared once, then shut off. Someone was watching. I threw myself into a sprint toward the main gate, heart pounding, lungs burning. The sedan door opened. A silhouette stepped out, tall, broad, expression hidden. But he didn't run after me. He just watched. Silent. Observing. I reached the street and flagged down the first cab I saw, practically diving inside. Where to? The driver asked. Baltimore First National, I gasped. Fast. The bank was old stone, marble columns, a relic of a time when money was something you could see and touch. A manager escorted me to the vault after verifying the key and my ID twice. The box was larger than I expected. My hands shook as I slid it out. Inside were several items. Photocopies of Swiss bank statements. Names of defense contractors linked to Soviet payments. Letters from whistleblowers who died mysteriously. A list of helicopter crash victims tied to defective parts. A reel-to-reel tape labeled Karshev confession, complete. And at the bottom, another envelope. Addressed to me. Samuel. Not all inheritance is wealth. Some of it is burden. I unfolded the letter. The money in these Swiss accounts, $87 million today, came from blood. American blood. I kept access so someone in the family could correct the past. That someone is you. I stared at the numbers on the statements. My grandfather had access to all of it. Money he could have used to escape poverty, trauma, everything. But he left it untouched. Because it wasn't his to spend. It wasn't mine either. My phone buzzed again. This time the ID said. Dennis Callahan, my cousin, investigative journalist. Sam, he said, breathless. I just got an anonymous tip telling me you had something big. Something involving defense contractors and Cold War fraud. My blood iced. They're watching me. Who? The Ashlands. And others. I don't know how far this goes. Dennis paused. Do you have evidence? I looked at the tape. The statements. The ledger. Yes. Enough to break them. A long silence. Sam, he said finally, voice low. This could be the biggest political story in 50 years. It could also get me killed. He exhaled sharply. Where are you right now? In a bank vault. Stay there. I'm on my way. I hung up. My reflection stared back at me in the polished steel wall, haunted, angry, terrified. For the first time in my life, I understood what my grandfather meant. Not all inheritance is wealth. Some is war. And mine had just begun. The vault's heavy door closed with a metallic thud that echoed through my chest. For a moment, I stood alone with decades of secrets sealed into steel and silence. The reel-to-reel tape weighed almost nothing, yet it felt heavier than everything that had crushed me over the past 6 months, my marriage, my home, my career, every piece of my identity Elena and Grant dismantled with smug precision. But this was bigger than me. Bigger than heartbreak. Bigger than the Ashlands. Bigger than anything my grandfather had ever told my father, anything he'd written in that journal, anything he'd taken to his grave. Footsteps approached. Dennis burst into the vault room, breathless, eyes wide, camera bag slung over one shoulder. He looked like he'd sprinted through traffic. Tell me this isn't some elaborate meltdown, he said, chest rising and falling. Tell me you have something real. I opened the safe deposit box wider. He saw the documents. The statements. The names. The tape. His jaw dropped. Jesus, Sam, he whispered. This is the kind of story they make reporters disappear for. Yeah, I said. That's what I'm afraid of. We took everything to a private room upstairs. Dennis spread the papers across the table like an autopsy. Every page told the same story in different forms: fraud, treason, bribery, hidden Soviet channels, blood money disguised as defense budgets. But it was the reel-to-reel tape, the confession of Colonel Yuri Karshev, that could destroy one of America's most powerful families. We need to digitize this, Dennis said. If we lose this tape, the whole case collapses. The bank president, a gray-haired man who clearly sensed he should not ask questions, let us use a conference room and one of their archival decks. When the tape started, a low hiss filled the speakers. Then a voice, weak, strained, thick with an accent but unmistakably articulate. I am dying. I don't have long. Your sergeant. He wants truth. Truth is dangerous. Truth kills powerful men. Dennis leaned forward. I felt my heartbeat in my throat. The voice continued. American contractor named Everett Ashland. He sold defective components. He knew they were defective. He knew soldiers would die. He traded lives for rubles. I froze. The hiss grew louder, then another voice, my grandfather's. You're saying Americans funded both sides? Yes. Money makes no loyalty. Men like Ashland? They fund whoever pays most. Your country lost men because of him. Dennis sat back, stunned. Oh my God, he whispered. It's not just fraud. It's not just corruption. This is war profiteering. Treason. Decades of families deserve compensation. And the Ashlands? I asked. They're finished, Dennis said. Grant included. Something inside me loosened. But not relief. Not yet. Because the tape wasn't finished. Karshiff's voice grew weaker. Your sergeant. He must not claim the money. Blood money curses generations. But he must keep access. He must expose truth one day. Then, tell his grandson. Truth waits. Truth hunts. Truth survives. The tape ended with a soft click. Silence filled the room like smoke. Dennis finally stood. Sam. We run this story in 2 phases. Phase 1, historical corruption, documented facts, no names of living individuals yet. Phase 2, the present-day connections, after we have legal protection. Once it's out, there's no going back. I know, I said softly. You could walk away, Dennis said. Take the Pentagon money. Live your life. No more danger. I looked at the reel-to-reel tape. At my grandfather's voice echoing across time. At the ledger listing dead soldiers. At the Swiss accounts built on the lives of young men who never came home. No, I said. This ends with the truth. The next 48 hours were a blur, meetings with Dennis's editors, forensic accountants, attorneys, cybersecurity experts. I slept maybe 3 hours. The Ashlands must have sensed the walls closing in. At 6:42 a.m. on Tuesday, the Washington Post published the first phase. Blood Money, How a 1963 Defense Contract Scandal Fueled a Secret Cold War Pipeline. The story went viral within hours. Defense stocks wavered. Politicians scrambled. Veterans groups exploded with outrage. And by noon, federal investigators were at Ashland headquarters. Grant didn't last long. 2 days later, he was arrested at O'Hare Airport trying to board a flight to Luxembourg. When I saw the mugshot online, his perfect hair disheveled, the arrogance stripped from his face, I felt nothing. Not joy. Not vindication. Just closure. Elena called that night. 18 missed calls before I finally answered. Her voice broke instantly. Sam, please, I didn't know what his family was involved in. I thought he was just someone who understood me. You chose him, I said simply. I made a mistake, she sobbed. They froze all my accounts. The condo. The furniture. Everything was paid with Ashland money. I have nothing left. For a second, I almost felt pity. Then she whispered. I want to come home. Home. The word sounded foreign coming from her mouth. Home? I repeated quietly. Elena, that house wasn't a home the second you let Grant walk into it. Please, Sam, she said. I made one mistake. One? I said softly. You made hundreds. I just didn't see them. She broke into full sobs. But I felt nothing. I hope you rebuild, I said gently. But not with me. I hung up, and for the first time since the divorce hearing, the weight finally lifted off my chest. The final phase of the story dropped 3 weeks later. Names. Evidence. The Karshiff confession. The Swiss accounts. The Ashland legacy laid bare in the harshest sunlight. It was the largest defense corruption case in American history. Ashland Industries collapsed. Dozens of affected families filed lawsuits, funded by the trust fund created using the Swiss accounts, money my grandfather refused to touch. The Pentagon money, every cent of the $148 million, came to me cleanly. Legally. Deservedly. But I didn't buy a mansion. Didn't buy a car collection. Didn't buy luxury. I bought purpose. A modest townhome near the Milwaukee Symphony. A music center for veterans' families. Scholarships for children of servicemen lost to those defective helicopters. And music therapy rooms in VA hospitals using my grandfather's compositions. Sometimes I perform at those clinics. Sometimes an old veteran lifts his head mid-song, eyes sharpening like they recognize something. Once, a man whispered. Silent measure, you know the rhythm. Your grandfather knew it. And I play the next measure just a bit louder. Because I'm not just playing music. I'm playing truth. Truth my grandfather died protecting. Truth buried for 60 years. Truth that tore down a dynasty built on lies. And truth that rebuilt me. If you followed this journey, if the story moved you, if it reminded you that hidden truths always rise, please like, share, comment, and subscribe for more true stories where justice eventually finds its way to the surface.